the war games against Iran is hilarious to me. It is hilarious. And it makes it even funnier at the fact that the United States government has been obsessed with attacking Iran for decades now. And the only reason they haven't done it is because we would lose, or at least we wouldn't win. Like it would just like
Mhm.
there's like it would be worse than anything else that we've had, and it's looked pretty bad over the last couple of decades. Like it's just like the size and the terrain. It's like I don't even know what you would combine to try to make it like it would be like combining like California and Afghanistan and trying to go to war with this country. It would be insane. And another thing you mentioned, Alex, about how well, gosh, golly gee, why won't the Iranians accept like our democratic form of government? Yeah, they tried that, my G. Ask Mohammad Mossadegh how that went for him when they elected him, and he had the wild and crazy idea that the Iranians should control the money from their own oil field. Yeah, that fell apart immediately because of our influence. So yeah, the funniest thing, people don't say it much anymore. Like it's not quite their strongest argument because of how blatantly false it is that we're making the world safe for democracy and shit. No, like we all know this. And Alex, I'll ask you. I was gonna shit on somebody. I can't. Oh, Pete Buttigieg. That's right. I was gonna shit on him too. I was gonna because John brought him up, and it's like I don't know if I trust Buttigieg in particular, just him in particular, to dial down the. I don't trust anyone who was in the military. I don't, and I can say that because I, so, and I'm sure Alex will back me up on this. But I was going to ask you, was there a point in time? Because I've talked to John about this a few times, and he's mentioned us having like a veterans, council on here talking about this very same thing. Is that like was there a moment when like you and other people you knew in service kind of came to the realization that we're not here defending freedom, we're the muscle arm for multinational corporations, that's what we're here for. Like was there like a light bulb moment for you with that, or did you already know?
I mean, I haven't deployed or really done anything crazy.
Mhm.
It's actually my 4-year anniversary when I set foot in Quantico for officer candidate school. So I mean, I joined during a peacetime corps. So I don't believe I'd be the best person to respond to this. But what I
Mm.
can say is that when I was on active duty, I do recall people carrying weapons that were going with Marines into Brazil. And at the time, Jair Bolsonaro was in office, and I remember learning about the genocide of the indigenous peoples in Brazil and about the destruction of the Amazon. And I remember thinking, do I really want to be enabling this? But sure enough, I thought, okay, hold on, but they're going to have an election. Maybe Lula da Silva will win, and he'll at least try to stop what's going on. And sure enough, in a really close election, Lula da Silva, not perfect, but Jair Bolsonaro was voted out of office. I thought, thank goodness,
Yeah.
so I'm good there. And so, and yeah, I guess to the other point about you can never trust somebody in the military. I would say that is frequently true, but I would say that I wouldn't say that it's always true. I try to be very careful with
No.
absolute statements because are there sometimes good people who do speak out, whistleblowers, etc. Sure. I mean, I would say that from what I've currently seen from the Marine Corps leadership, like General Eric Smith was talking about, oh, are there any Marines in Gaza? And you don't see him jumping up and down going, yeah, let's send Marines into Gaza, help our allies. You're like, no. I mean, Lebanon is a sore spot, and he actually did. For example, he was at the 40th anniversary of the Buried Barracks bombing. And I mean, my mother was there as well. She attended it and was talking to the buried veterans who survived. And he talked about, for example, getting shot at by the Israelis. Like, wait, why is our ally shooting at us and cussing us out and so on and so forth, all of which was contained in General Robert Barrow's letter. Um, and so I imagine that can't possibly be lost on General Smith. So I'm thinking, okay, he's probably in a difficult position that you have a president and commander in chief who does not care about this history, probably doesn't even know about it, and is actively just shilling more and more weapons out to Israel. But then he knows what he knows. So it's like, well, how do you balance, what your commander in chief wants versus what you know to be absolutely correct? And that's the moral dilemma that I think many at the highest echelons of the military, that's the situation they find themselves in. I mean, for me, I would say it's a no-brainer. I would, throw my rank down and say, hey, no, this is absolutely wrong. We cannot be supporting this. We should not be enabling this.
Mhm.
And I would say that in this situation, the best piece of advice I would think is, I mean, nothing could stop Biden from, let's say, firing General Smith and putting in some like total Zionist who's like, yeah, let's put Marines into Gaza, let's send it, and the West Bank, let's, as Nikki Haley said, finish them, right? When it comes to Hamas,
Yeah.
and do this stupid, just get us into another pointless conflict in the Middle East. So I'm thinking, okay, it's like a rock and a hard place. I would look at that and think, okay, well, at that point, I'd be advocating for disengagement. So we saw, for example, the USS Gerald Ford withdraw to be determined as to exactly what that looks like and what that really means. But I would say, okay, should we withdraw, leave Israel to its own devices, let them fight their own battle for once? I mean, I would argue this for me that we owe a lot of humanitarian aid to the dying women and children of Gaza. I'm over here
Yeah.
saying military forces, it should be justified in cases of stopping a genocide, kind of like it was in stopping Bosnia, given there were some mistakes that were made, like using uranium bombs in civilian areas. Yeah, that part wasn't good. But the stopping Milosevic part of protecting the Bosnians, I think that was the right thing to do. The US just went about it in a very silly way. And so, kind of like saying the Dresden bombing, yeah, we could have done without that, but stopping Nazi Germany, completely justified.
Mhm.
And so, or like the atom bombs to end Japan, yeah, probably could have done without those. Oddly conveyed, of
Yeah.
course. But my argument is, the Imperial Japanese Army did terrible stuff on my dad's side of the family. My great grandfather's brother was a prisoner of war in the Philippines and saw firsthand what being tortured was like, and he wasn't even the one who got the worst of it. It was the native Filipinos who were like essentially facing an ethnic cleansing campaign of their own that they were resisting. And so, absolutely horrific stuff. I don't think anybody would argue that the U.S. was wrong to stop, like, fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, or Imperial Japan. But again, even in those instances, the U.S. didn't do the right thing for the right reason. They did the right thing, but for the wrong reason. It's all about, oh, we have to defend our economic interests. It's not, oh, we care so much about these innocent people being killed. And so I would say, okay, in terms of making a political pitch, you can't while in uniform. And then if you try, that might actually backfire on the very people that you're trying to help. So it's it's a tough one. It's not a position that I personally would enjoy being in. Um, but I certainly know how I would react. And I would say, yeah, in many cases it is true. And they say like not only are all cops bad, right? You hear the ACAP slogan, but people say, oh, this also applies to the military because they're also cops in a way. And that I think in a lot of cases is true. But then again, I mean, when you see vets speak out, I mean, there are videos of vets pulling off the medals from like Iraq and Afghanistan, throwing them in the dumpster, openly denouncing the service. I mean, I don't really blame individual troops. I blame the people, the politicians who are
Right.
taking marching orders
Mhm.
from first and foremost. Now, if you get some vet who's like beating their chest, like, yeah, I did Haditha. Yeah, that was a great idea. Then I'm like, okay, no, like you're a psychopath. Like those are people I have no respect for whatsoever. But um, but yeah, but in terms of people who, let's say, they didn't commit war crimes like Haditha, but they did other terrible stuff in Iraq, like I don't know, the any number of like bombing campaigns, for example, against Al Qaeda, and you're fed the rhetoric that, oh well, you're doing this to defend the United States. This is
Yep.
retribution for 9/11, and as like you have these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, they don't know any different, so they get tricked essentially into going into these things, and this is why a lot of them, as they get older and learn the truth, they become disillusioned and angry, and I don't blame them,
Well,
especially those that get injured. For example, going into Iraq or Afghanistan for that matter.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even just like the 18-year-olds, like, commanders. I mean, like they're just taking like their orders and like, hey, this is what we have to do. They tell you why. There's only so much questioning you can do. And you're just like, okay, here's my job. I can do it. And you think you're doing the right thing. And when you're talking about the all cops are bastards and applies to soldiers as well, like John and I have talked about this before, about how once again, academic lefties, we lose the forest for the trees, and we start focusing on, well, this cop is a racist, and that's like, okay, yeah, look, it wouldn't matter if he's racist or not. Like, it's the organization, it's the system that the cop is a part of that we're critiquing, and that's the same thing with the military. It's the exact same thing, and the whole difference with, yeah, there are, people in the military or vets who I don't consider bad people, obviously, but it really is disgusting when you see like what was the Chris Kyle types, the guys that are like, oh yeah, I love popping people in the head. I got off on
Mhm.
that shit. Any male over the age of 15, I was taken out, and like gets back home was, I wish I was out there, sniping people again. That guy's a fucking psychopath. Well, was, thank God, a psychopath. He's out of here. And one thing I want to bring up too, you were talking about, the bombing of Dresden and shit like that. I'd actually never thought about this, about the atomic bombs, and how, so Truman didn't drop the bombs to necessarily, well, I guess like his primary motivation in dropping the atomic bombs was, to send a message to the Soviet Union. He knew the war was coming to an end quick, and he was pretty sure, the Allies were going to win, and that, the next challenge for the United States would be, the Soviets. And so he's like, okay, time to flex muscles on the Soviets so they know not to fuck with us because we have atomic bombs. Here's a perfect opportunity that we want. We don't want to do a ground invasion of Japan because that's just going to prolong this war out. It'll cost more money, more people will die. It's just going to be horrible altogether. So let's drop these bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It'll end the war and it'll scare the Soviets. And what I always said was like, I think the dropping of the bomb was unnecessary. And it's funny when you mention Dresden because the defense that I always used was we could have firebombed the cities and had the same result and killed like, 1/10, 1/5 of the people. But that's still slaughtering a shitload of civilians. Like it's still the same thing, just at a smaller scale. I had actually never thought about like how fucked up that reasoning was. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, war is messy, and no one who pretends they have all the answers actually has them all. John, I'm sorry, I didn't jump in with you in there, but what were you thinking about this topic? Go with.
No, I mean, it's funny because we just talked about this last. I mean, not last week. It was a couple weeks ago now, but the video is released this week. About how the criticism is often unfairly laid at the grounds of individuals, whether it be soldiers, police, whatever, instead of looking at the systemic problems in place. And
Mhm.
you mentioned, it's funny if you watched Oppenheimer. There's a scene in it where I forget, was it Truman that was in the room in the scene? I forget exactly who it was. But they're talking like all the high brass, and they're like, they're deciding where to bomb, and they're like, let's Kyoto's brought up, and one of the dudes is like, "Oh no, don't bomb Kyoto. I went there on vacation with my wife. It was beautiful." And that's the reason they didn't bomb Kyoto.
Oh
And like,
shit.
that scene Lord of the Rings where the dude kicks the helmet and actually breaks his toe, and like it's like a meme that like Lord of the Rings fans
Hmm.
always like to like pause the movie and say, "Did you know that Viggo Mortensen actually broke his toe in this scene? And that's why he screamed." That's what I did to my girlfriend. I was like, "Did you know that Kyoto thing is really true?" That wasn't a joke. It was said for laughs, but no, that's true. That's how fucked up this was. But no, it is. It's just, to me, like, I don't necessarily not trust vets. I actually think that some of my most trustworthy, like, people out there are vets. TJ, you being, someone whose opinion I trust very much as a vet, it's because I, who made the belly of the beast quote? That Americans are in the belly of the beast. It's a
Mm.
famous quote. I forget who said it.
Someone I should
But
know. Yeah.
like, they know the danger firsthand. Like, you see so clearly, and the brainwashing does work on a lot of them. But the ones who deprogram themselves, I find, have some of the most well-informed opinions on why all of this stuff is bad, because they lived it firsthand. So yeah, I don't think it's an individual thing. It's very much, there are monsters out there, and some of them are the troops on the ground, but most of them are the Trumans of the world. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it.